Hello there, this is Coden,
And this is Cassia.
and welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast where we discuss Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, as well as all things Star Wars. Today we'll be discussing the Knights of the Old Republic remake, sequel rumors, and the possibility of a remaster. Also, we'll be talking about the possibility of a remaster and Clone Wars Season 7. This is episode 14, and this is where the fun begins.
All right, so we are about 2 weeks away from Clone Wars Season 7. So I'm pumped for that. It'll be on Disney Plus here before you know it. There was a final trailer for Season 7, and I thought it was broken down pretty well. So I kind of wanted to commentate a bit on that. So it starts out with Darth Maul, and he's saying soon the galaxy will be remade. So I'm kind of thinking he knows something about Order 66, like Emperor Palpatine. I just wonder if Emperor Palpatine told him something about Order 66. And because we know Order 66 is coming, I think it's going to be very sad. And so it's good to kind of start out with that, and it kind of leaves you nervous and a little bit excited for what else is going to come this season.
I believe the Emperor did tell Darth Maul about the plan. I don't think it was as specific as there's a particular Order 66, but it was evident that Count Dooku was obviously involved with a lot of that plan, and it would have still needed to be brewed from the beginning, maybe as like a possible idea or thought that he was relaying with Darth Maul, and something that Darth Maul would have seen develop. Both in, well, maybe not so much in his exile because he was obviously not around, but towards his taking over of Mandalore and being a little bit more in the political wing, he would have seen a little bit of that.
Yeah. And then Maul continues, and he says, the Jedi and Republic will die. So I'm like, yeah, I think he knows, you know. And then Mace Windu says, I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi from the Jedi teleconference in Revenge of the Sith. So I'm thinking there's some overlap with Revenge of the Sith. And I kind of wonder how much overlap there will be in the final season, if it's just like the final episode, or if we get like the Battle of Coruscant, maybe like in the 5th episode or something. Like,
Clone Wars hasn't been shy to go over the politics of Star Wars, and I imagine that there's, we're going to need to bridge season 6 to season 7. And so we'll get a lot of the Ahsoka, Anakin, Obi-Wan story in there.
Yeah.
But I believe that later down this season's timeline, we're going to see maybe more of Mon Mothma.
Bail Organa.
Yeah, so we'll see more of Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. I would like to see a little bit of the Rebel Alliance at its kind of birth, and that initial build would be kind of neat to see.
Because a lot of those scenes, I don't know if you read the Revenge of the Sith novel, but
I did.
Yeah, it's excellent. Everyone should read it. There were a lot of rebellion scenes where it's like you have the birth of the rebellion, and Padme, Bail, and Mon Mothma were like, the rebellious trio getting stuff done for love and all that's good. But it's like Revenge of the Sith, it was like a 4-hour movie, and you can't really release a 4-hour movie into theaters. Or nor should you, Peter Jackson, But so a lot of those scenes, they were cut, but they were in the novel. I wonder if they could be recycled here. That would be interesting. But I mean, I think in the final season, people would rather have like Jedi clone action, and it doesn't look like they're skimping on the animation either. There's some pretty good shots of like Obi-Wan and Mace Windu fighting together, the clones taking out some targets, and I forgot to mention, in the Jedi teleconference, you see Depa Bilba's Padawan Caleb Doom. He will later go by Kanan Jarrus. He's the Jedi in the Rebels cartoon, so that's a fun Easter egg, like to kind of have that continuity. Speaking of the Ahsoka of it all, it looks like we find her at the beginning of the season, kind of in the lower levels of Coruscant, which I find interesting, because I think if I like left somewhere, I wouldn't want to be kind of in the same neighborhood. I know Coruscant's a big place, and maybe Ahsoka doesn't really have money. Like, I don't think the Jedi have Venmo because like attachments are bad or whatever, but because if I could if I had a Force bond and I could just sense like my master like kind of in the next neighborhood, like I would just be like, oh, I feel a little bit weird because I used to have a job here, but now I don't, and I'm kind of just hanging out in Coruscant, and they're on Coruscant, but I mean, I guess we'll just see her.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, that's where we leave her at the end of season 6, and it definitely looks like this is where it's going to pick up with season 7. And that's, you brought up a good point. Like, she is going to be broke. She's been cut off from the Jedi credit cards, so there is nowhere for her to go. There's no chance she can really go anywhere. And so I mean, if there is like a homeless shuttle, maybe she could use that, but doubt it. She probably has to rely more on the illegal and the kind of the scum part of Coruscant to get where she needs to go. And so it's possible that she might have to pick up a lot of just dirty work through, especially the beginning of the season, because it seems like from what's shown in the trailer, she's going to be coming back. So
but I don't imagine she's going to stay on Coruscant for long, because she'll be given a mission with the 501st to confront Darth Maul on Mandalore. Mm-hmm. But it'll be interesting because she's just going to be in a very delicate place, very emotional, and she's just having to find her place in the world again. And she thought, as a Jedi, she knew what she was doing, but she ended up leaving in season 5, and she said, we were trained to be keepers of the peace, not soldiers, so she's just trying to find her place again. But it looks like Ahsoka and Bo-Katan are shaking hands, so it looks like there's some factions of Death Watch that aren't as extreme and are gonna help the Republic.
No, it's basically there's the old Queen's sister that was part of Death Watch and
Satine.
Yeah.
And Bo-Katan was the sister.
Okay, so Bo-Katan at the death of Satine had split from Death Watch, and she took her followers with her. And so it's, I don't know if they would call themselves, they're not going to use the term Death Watch, but
Life Watch. Maybe they're lifeguards.
Or maybe they just like a loyal group of Mandalorians to the throne, like the actual throne, not the Maul throne.
Yeah.
So we'll see in season 7.
It'll be fun to see. So, oh, and speaking of Anakin's horrible hair, there it is in all its glory, and he's taking on, I believe his name is General Trench, like a tarantula. So, the hair, it's a thing, and it is there. So
it's horribly animated. They should have just left it as its clay self. I mean, hair is hard to animate, and they should have just left it alone. But
because I think it looked pretty Revenge of the Sithy already, but yeah, I guess they didn't leave it there. Rex has a good quote. He says, "We clones have mixed feelings about the war," and he goes on to say, like, without it they wouldn't exist, but it's like they exist only to die and be expendable in an army that just is like, it's all them, you know? I think it is a little bit of a cop-out, because it's later revealed that Rex took out his chip. I think that Rex, it would be more interesting if Rex had to execute it and not have a cop-out, that he took out the chip.
Well, and Rex is being part of the 501st, he wouldn't have had to turn on Anakin because the Emperor wouldn't have had.
But it looks like Rex is going to be on Mandalore with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they might explain why he takes out his chip in season 7, but whether he had the chip in or not at the time of Order 66, I don't think would have mattered towards his command with Anakin.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I would hope maybe Ahsoka kind of senses it and maybe doesn't kill him, but kind of just takes him out for a second, knocks him unconscious, and he has to think about it, and then something like that, he overcomes it. But I just think it's a little bit too easy to be like, yeah, I took out my chip. And it seems like a lot of the people who execute Order 66, you don't get to know them as much in the Clone Wars, and I would have had the opposite happen, kind of amp up the tragedy of everything, you know?
Yeah, and it's possible that maybe there will be a Order 66 incident on Mandalore where with Ahsoka and the 501st being deployed there, and maybe that causes the trauma for Rex to pull the chip out. We know that Ahsoka survives the event, but that still could have been a problem.
Yeah, she fakes her death along with Rex.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it happens. There was a novel by E.K. Johnston, I believe. I didn't read it, but I kind of just saw the summary. But from what I've heard, it kind of just summarizes these parts, because I think they just wanted to give fans enough in case Clone Wars wasn't renewed to give them some answers, but keep it a little bit vague enough in case they did end up bringing Clone Wars back. So now they're filling in those gaps. But yeah, it's interesting to see that shot of Ahsoka, and it looks like the ship is in hyperspace and her hand is on her head, and I just wonder if she's kind of sensing maybe the metaphorical death of Anakin Skywalker, and she just is sensing darkness or something. It'll be interesting. And then I just have to highlight that there's an amazing animated shot of Obi-Wan in the fog and wind with his lightsaber, and it just looked so amazing, and it's just above and beyond anything I've seen in the Clone Wars yet. This is on par with the movies. It's just visual poetry, I think.
You're in love.
I'm not in love. I just think it's an amazingly animated shot, and it deserves praise, but I don't know. Sometimes I think when you're a female fan, if you're just passionate about anything, people just say you're fangirling. So, yep. But yeah, it that shot deserves an Annie Award. So, I did lose it at the Anakin and Padme shot. The war's been going on so long, and they have some flaws, like as a couple, but I just think like the Clone Wars is kind of what's causing most of their problems. But it looks like after season 6, like they've made up, and during like this shot, like Anakin's there, Padme's a hologram. She's actually wearing the outfit she's gonna die in, because Anakin is going to force choke her. So it's kind of like a little haunting, you know? They're kind of like holding hands across the stars. Padme's a hologram, and I don't know, I just felt all the feelings. So it kind of paralleled Rey and Kylo's hand touch a bit. No matter what you think about either relationship, I think like that was kind of a parallel, I would say. But it looks like we're gonna see the Battle of Coruscant in this season, so I'm excited for that. But the weird thing is, I thought like the Clone Wars was gonna end with Anakin and Obi-Wan leaving Ahsoka on Mandalore and then having to fly to save the Chancellor. And then, you know, like that drum beat at the start of Revenge of the Sith, like after the title crawl, I thought like Clone Wars was going to end with like them flying out and then like kind of hearing that drum beat, and then that's how it would end. But this is the middle of the season, it looks like. So
yeah,
wow.
I think it'll work really well if they just focus on what else is going on in the world.
Yeah, rather than recreating everything scene for scene. Yeah. As much as it would be cool to see the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise rendered in animated form, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, there is a lot of great story that happens in the Revenge of the Sith that never was in the Revenge of the Sith. I mean, we could see more of what's going on in some of the other worlds like Felucia or Kashyyyk with Yoda. And we could see
the droid attack on the Wookiees.
Well, yeah, that we can see the beginning of the Battle of Coruscant.
It looks like we know what's going to happen with Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme, but what will be interesting to see is the showdown with Maul and Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. And the trailer was kind of building up Maul, building up Ahsoka, and then they meet at the end, and it's gonna be fun to see that showdown. He just keeps on dying and keeps on being angry and being reborn. You know,
she cuts off his fabricated legs, so he has to get new fabricated legs to be cut off again by Obi-Wan later.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, but it was interesting to see like Sam Witwer voices Maul. I suppose, like, I think I called him Darth Maul a few times, but he's only Maul right now. He is animated a bit through motion capture from Ray Park, who portrayed him in The Phantom Menace, so they're kind of bringing him to life together, so that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of wondering, like, Revenge of the Sith wasn't that happy of a movie. The only way it's really positive at the end is you kind of see the twins ending up in new homes, and there's a hope through them. And you kind of know, like, 4, 5, and 6 are going to come, and things are going to get better because Anakin's going to be redeemed and his kids are going to save the galaxy. I'm kind of wondering how Clone Wars Season 7 is going to end, and if it's going to end on... Can it end on a positive note? Because Ahsoka thinks, like, all of her friends are dead, and she doesn't know about the twins. So I'm just wondering if it'll leave, like, in a spot where Ahsoka's happy ending is not being dead and just kind of deciding to become Fulcrum. And then maybe we'll see, like, Luke and Leia in animated form go to their new homes, and maybe we'll see the binary sunset again. Mm-hmm. But I'm just kind of wondering how they can end it and make it happy, or if it's just going to be like, war sucks, and then you die, the end. How do you think they're going to end?
I think it's possible. Again, I think if they pull away from the story of Revenge of the Sith and let Revenge of the Sith stand on its own, there's a lot of ways that they can end it good. For one, we see the rebellion initially rise up, but there's other things that could go down, like making an agreement with the Mon Calamari.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good story that can be positive through that. And I think that sure we'll see a lot of the meat of the TV show, the plot points of, Delta through, wherever they go, excluding maybe the last 4 or 5 episodes of the Revenge of the Sith story, Order 66, Jedi's dying, the drama with the clones finding their place in the war. We're going to see all that, but I think it can still end good with the rebellion forming.
So it'll be interesting to see, but I definitely think after Clone Wars is done, there will be a Rebels sequel series, and Disney will be like, did you like Ahsoka in season 7? There will be more Ahsoka in the Rebels sequel series, so I could see that happening.
But yeah, I imagine that they're really going to be throwing their cards into Ahsoka to try and make Rebels successful.
People didn't really like her at the beginning, but she's like a fan favorite character now.
Well, there's a lot of character growth. She was really annoying at the beginning, and she gets better as
she failed and got better, and people like her, So
all right, so let's move on to our next topic. This is a Forbes article about a possible remake or remaster of KotOR Knights of the Old Republic. This was an article written by Paul Tassi, and we're not going to get super far into what the article says, but if you want to look it up, I basically just Googled Knights of the Old Republic remake Forbes, and it pulls right up. You'll just see that there's a Forbes link, and it pulls up Paul Tassi's article.
Yeah.
But
it's easily accessible.
Yeah. Basically, this article just goes over the idea of KotOR as a remake or remaster. Some companies will interchange the two. They'll start talking about how it's going to be a remake and it ends up being a remaster. But we just kind of wanted to talk about what we thought of the idea of a revisit to the original KotOR game. What do you think, Cassia?
I would like to know more if it's a remake or a remaster. I think if I were given the choice, I would prefer a remaster, just because I think the original KotOR series was like lightning in a bottle, and it's like a 20-year-old memory that so many people have, and so many people have different ideas of what Knights of the Old Republic is, who Revan is, who the Exile is. And the Star Wars fandom can be kind of, how do you say this nicely?
We don't like to share our action figures.
Yeah. So sometimes it can be a little bit too much like that. So I just kind of think if there was a remake, probably everyone would be upset, no matter what.
There's a problem with this. For the last 3 to 4 years, video game companies have been turning to remakes and remasters to try and hype up their player base, get people excited for basically revisiting nostalgia. And it's only worked a couple times, whether it's a remaster or a remake. But this is kind of the trend in gaming now, is we don't really have a whole lot of ideas. Let's revisit something that was amazing and try and bring it back.
Yeah, that's what happens in the CinemaScape as well. So
right,
we out of ideas, yo.
The some examples, we've talked about this in the past. Battlefront 2 and Battlefront 2015 being a remake attempt of the old Battlefronts.
Yeah.
And there's been other games by other companies like Warcraft 3 from Blizzard, which is a recent fiasco. Skyrim was a remaster attempt just a couple of years ago that was a successful attempt. And that's kind of the ground that we're going to be treading on with an idea of a KotOR revisit for a remake or remaster. Is like, would a remaster be really awesome? It could, if it's not screwed up.
There are definitely some glitches that it would be nice if they were ironed out and the graphics could be updated. Yeah, there was a group called Aperion, I believe, was trying to just update the graphics, but it was a fan attempt, so they were shut down, I think, by Lucasfilm and
by
EA.
Disney, actually.
Or Disney.
Yeah, Disney and EA. There was an HD remaster fan made for the old Battlefront 2 that nobody gave 2 cents over. It was published back before the Disney and EA acquisition. So, and it looks great. It was built for 1080p and it looks really good if you download that mod.
The rumors are not crystal clear if it's a remake, remaster, or a spiritual sequel, like something completely new. These rumors have kind of been kicked around since like 2015, and nothing really happened. A lot of I think it was Respawn who did Jedi Fallen Order. They're probably busy with the Jedi Fallen Order sequel or something else, but I imagine it's been a successful game. I am pretty sure there's going to be a sequel.
Yeah.
And then DICE is kind of tied up with Battlefront 2, which had a really rough launch due to like DLC, and I think they kind of hyped up the story to be like, yeah, you'll be an Imperial and First Order person, and then it's like, just kidding, it's a rebel. So
yeah, I think they're actually working on, well, they have a skeleton team working on Battlefront 2, but they've got the rest of their team working on Battlefield 6.
But from what I hear, Battlefront 2 has turned out to be a pretty decent game. But it would be interesting to see who would handle like whatever this KotOR would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the cons of a remaster is a lot of the times there isn't a lot of money for remastering a video game, and then a lot of people aren't really willing to spend on a old game that looks nicer. They're more willing to spend 20 to anywhere from less than $30 on a remaster. And so in terms of profit speaking, it's not that feasible for a major publisher like EA unless they introduce DLC or microtransactions. And so that's something that is unfortunately likely for a remaster of KotOR. But the pros are that if they don't do a lot of meddling, then all it's going to be is a great game that looks nicer on a modern display.
I was hoping for just a remaster. The more I thought about it, I would just like some of the glitches cleaned up and the updated graphics. And I conducted a poll on our Instagram, and 75% of everyone wanted a remaster and 25% wanted a remake. So
I'm actually leaning more towards a remake. For me, a remake that's properly done is more justified to be charged at its full price, because you are going to be experiencing more new things in the game. The story can remain intact, but a proper remake gives a lot more to come back to than a remaster for someone who's played and loved the original. Something that's coming up here shortly is the remake of Final Fantasy VII, which is a complete overhaul. Now there's mixed feelings like there was over this poll of a remake or remaster of KotOR, but what it's doing is it's modernizing the video game to a modern video game feel. So things like turn-based combat isn't going to be much of a thing in Final Fantasy VII, which was the only real way to go with Final Fantasy VII back on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
But for me, I think a larger or a more open play space with real-time combat is something that I would appreciate, just to allow the game to flow better, but experience the same good story.
Yeah.
so that it's not just a whole new game entirely.
Yeah. I mean, if it were to be remade, I would prefer to have some of the team that was involved in the creation of Knights of the Old Republic there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Just so it would be kind of like not a completely different animal. You want to keep it. You want to keep the same flavor that people love. I mean, I'm not opposed to like some updated ways of like running the game or like having some new side quests, but I just wouldn't want it to feel like it was completely different.
Yeah, I mean,
But
see, that's kind of the big advantage is that if KotOR was built on the Frostbite engine, for example, the Frostbite, which is an EA owned system, Frostbite already has a lot of the physics built into it already, and so all they're really doing is changing what things look like.
yeah.
And so if they were to remake KotOR in Frostbite, it wouldn't be as major of a task to complete than trying to dig up old code and update visuals, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess we'll just see what comes of these rumors, if they're legit, if they're not, if the movie rumors come to pass. It would be interesting to have like a new take on Knights of the Old Republic done in the live action field, coincide with a game. Sometimes that doesn't happen as much. It would be interesting if we ended up like Disney felt there could only be a live action or there could only be a video game, but it would be interesting. So I guess we'll just see what the future contains.
All right. Well, this has been a shorter episode. So this has been Coden.
And this has been Cassia.
And anytime you can find us at twitch.tv/CodenBon for various video game streaming like KotOR 2. You could also contact us through our email at ebonhawkpodcast@gmail.com. There, feel free to email us your comments and questions that we can address on future episodes.
Okay, and then our Instagram is Ebonhawk Podcast. Our podcast can be found on SoundCloud and iTunes at The Ebonhawk, and we are always grateful for reviews and subscriptions.
Our intro and outro themes that you have heard today were composed by Alistair Shorman. He can be found at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/alistairsounds. The transition music was composed by Christian Walker, and he can be found at christianwalkermusic.com. And this has been episode 14 of the Ebonhawk. May the force be with you all, and we'll be back soon. Bye for now.